We're glad to be joined by Stephen M. Smith, Touchdown Alabama and Fox 97.9, the way it is, Monday through Friday, 2 to 4 Central Time. Stephen, hopefully we can reel you back in one more time before the boys kick off on Monday night. I'm going to steer you back into the SEC conversation one more time before I let you go. So going back to 1998, pre-1998, we had conference champions that were locked into bowl games, and therefore we didn't necessarily always have the type matchups to produce a clear-cut national champion than what we needed. That's a day gone by. 1998, we come up with this BCS formula that was tweaked a number of times, but there was, I would argue with anyone, excluding 1 or 2 years, you could always make a solid argument for another team that got left out at number 3 and number 4 that had just as strong a resume, just as much of an argument to get to that national championship game. But certainly once Florida knocked off Ohio State and then LSU won a national championship, once we got in toward the latter portion of the 2000 to 2010 decade, the SEC clearly distinguished itself as the best in college football. And even the most rabid haters and detractors of the SEC had to admit at that point, this was the best conference in college football. There's really no argument. I argued that the narrative was too broad, that the groupthink was too wide, that the gap was perceived to be too big, and people weren't taking into account a lot of things. But I never, at one point past about 2007 or so, debated that the SEC was the best conference. Now, here in the last 3 to 4 years, there have been some other results that have led us to possibly a different narrative. And the SEC is still extremely strong at the top. There's no question about that. Look at our national championship game. But it would be hard-pressed for anyone to convince me that they know the best conference in college football. I don't know. I'm going to be crunching the metrics as soon as we get done with this championship game, Stephen, crunching the metrics of the conferences playing each other and who truly played the best in all the non-conference games, regular season and postseason. Maybe it's the Big Ten. Maybe it's the SEC. The ACC was so good in the postseason last year, but not so much this year. It's a difficult call. I know it's not the Pac-12. I know that they've taken a hit the last few years. And I know despite the Big 12 making some gains the last couple of years, they're definitely not the best conference. But between those other three, I have no idea the best conference between those three. So do you think some people have an issue with the SEC being represented twice in the playoff? And now, to its credit, to Georgia and Alabama's credit, they won the games to get to the championship game. When this happened in 2011, obviously a lot of people didn't like the SEC playing a championship game, but the thought was this is the best conference and there's really no argument. Today, 6 years later, there is an argument, but we still have 2 SEC teams in the final.
And it's a crazy thing, and this is the reason why we have guys like yourself, Mark, and me. We are up all night or some parts of the night trying to make some sense out of all of this, because this year's SEC, go back to 2011, you look at the coaches that were in the SEC. Urban Meyer was there. Les Miles was there. Of course, Nick Saban. I believe Bobby Petrino was still in the SEC with Arkansas. Forgive me if I'm wrong about that. Dan Mullen was there. You had top-tier coaches in the SEC all across the board. I even think James Franklin was still at Vanderbilt. So you had top-tier coaches across the league, coaches that the moment you knew who that coach was, you knew that's an SEC caliber coach. That the SEC's got the horses as far as the who's who among the coaching ranks. You fast forward it now, it's Nick Saban, but the number 2 guy looks like Gus Malzahn. It could possibly be Kirby Smart. Should he continue? Bielema's gone. Butch Jones is gone. So many guys have been ran out. And you got all of these other guys in that would be better suited as coordinators, but they're coaches. And you look at the Big Ten, yes, Michigan still hasn't really shown that they can really put themselves in that national prominence. But you look at the coaches in the Big Ten, there's Urban Meyer. He's a proven guy. There is Jim Harbaugh. Yes, he's khaki pants, rah, in your face guy, but he can recruit his butt off. You have Paul Chris, which don't sleep on that man. Madison, Wisconsin native. They just beat the butt off the turnover chain in Miami. And then you got James Franklin over there at Penn State. You got Mark D'Antoni, who's a historian at Michigan State. The guy at, Iowa does a pretty decent job. So the coaches right now are in the Big Ten. The teams right now, you still have fire in the SEC. You have fire in the ACC. The coaches are in the Big Ten. It's literally become a coin flip of, on any given day, which really is the best conference. I mean, you can look at the SEC, and you have Notre Dame beats LSU. You have Kentucky, who has Northwestern, gets beat by Northwestern. You really honestly don't know. It's a coin flip between those three.
Stephen M. Smith or Touchdown Alabama, we could debate best conference all night, and right now I don't know what to debate. I wouldn't necessarily put one conference on the table and say, hey, I'm going to argue for this conference because I know they're the best. I'm going to be crunching some numbers as soon as the season is over, and that's all it's going to be, is that the numbers are going to point and lean toward maybe one conference, but matchups and a lot of other factors had much to do with that. I don't think at this point, and this is what makes it very interesting at this point, is that the SEC seemingly has the two best teams. I don't know for sure that they're the two best teams, but they certainly have the claim as being the two best teams, and the most legitimate claim because they went out and took care of business this past weekend in Georgia and Alabama. But maybe the top five belong to the Big Ten. I don't know. It's a difficult call, and it's for interesting debate among college football fans. That's for sure.
One thing I want you to do, Mark, is once you get done crunching those, just send me a demographic of what you're crunching. Just send me the mean average of what you're crunching up there.
Oh, this is what I've done. This is what I've done each and every off season, Stephen, is what I've done is I have taken all the results of all the Power 5 games, meaning Alabama's game against Florida State, all the non-conference games among the Power 5. I leave out the group of 5 only because I'm making it a closed experiment of only Power 5 against Power 5. And each league plays about 25 to 30 games against the other leagues. And then what I do is I seed the teams based on the standings. So Alabama, of course, let's say Alabama beat Ohio State this year. Obviously, that should be given a lot more credit to the SEC than if Alabama beat Purdue. So I seed the teams, and then I come up with a points differential. So Alabama, there being 14 teams in the three conferences, and I know that there's only 10 and 12 in the other two, but then I work out the math. Believe me, I work out the math to make it accurate. But if Alabama beats Ohio State or Alabama beats Oklahoma, since they're all first place teams, then you get a set point total, which would be 14 to represent the 14 teams in the league. But if Alabama beat like a fourth place team from another league, well, that's a 3-point differential. They don't get the full 14 points because they beat a fourth place team. So they get 11 points and so forth and so on. And I work it out that way.
I'm going to enjoy watching that.
It's coming your way here in a few weeks.
I'm going to definitely enjoy watching that. But this Alabama-Georgia matchup, and for the Crimson Tide, especially without Anthony Jennings on the field, Tide fans will look at either Terrell Lewis or Jamie Mosley at that jack rush linebacker position. Christian Miller will still play his normal spot at strong side, but at that jack rush backer spot where Anthony Jennings is usually spotted or usually lined up at, I expect to see either a Terrell Lewis or a Jamie Mosley. And the biggest thing for the Tide will be to fill in the holes in the run game. Nick Chubb, slippery guy, power guy. Sony Michel, tremendous speed. DeAndre Swift can do a little bit of everything. So in this game, gap assignment, very, very crucial for the Crimson Tide.
Nick Saban and Alabama is searching for a fifth national championship in 9 years since going back to that 2009 victory at the Rose Bowl against Texas. And for Georgia, it's trying to add that championship number 2 onto the one hoisted by Herschel Walker and Buck Bellew and Vince Dooley and company back in 1981. The 1980 national championship won, of course, on New Year's Day at the Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame. Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama, 97.9, the Fox affiliate there, with his show The Way It Is, Monday through Friday, 2 to 4 Central Time, joining us to talk Alabama football. Stephen, we always appreciate the breakdown.
No problem, Mark. Thank you. And stay warm, buddy. Stay warm.